Congressman Seth Moulton attended the address last night and summed up the situation by saying Russia's stock is up, China's stock is up, and American stocks are down. The State of the Union is not good. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee, and he's joining us now from Washington. Welcome back to the program. Can you answer Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister's question? Make that make sense. The trade war on allies, while, as Justin Trudeau said, dealing with a murderous dictator, Vladimir Putin.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. And I'm not proud to stand here as an American, let alone a representative of our government, and say that to a foreign leader. We have our political disputes. They're supposed to end at the water's edge. We're supposed to be united as a country when it comes to dealing with both our allies and our adversaries. But there is no unity in America on this point. We are selling our allies out, and we are cozying up to dictators under Donald Trump.
But why? Why do you think that? What is the overarching plan or vision?
Well, I think it's a few different things going on at once here. He obviously believes it's good for our economy to put massive tariffs on other countries. And he somehow thinks that that's going to help us. I can't find an economist who agrees with this. I know there are a lot of Republicans in Congress and even advisors in his own administration who are very concerned about this approach. But that's what he wants to do. And understandably, it alienates a lot of our allies. Justin Trudeau said it pretty well. Canada is our closest friend, and this is pushing them away. At the same time, he made this campaign promise to end the Ukraine war on day one. Well, we're a long time past day one. He obviously failed to fulfill that promise, but he is willing to get peace at all costs, even selling out to Russia. Donald Trump has had a long-standing relationship with Vladimir Putin. This is not the first time that he's cozied up to Russia. Remember, there was a time back in his first term when he actually said he trusts Putin more than the CIA. I don't know what to say when you have a commander-in-chief who trusts Putin more than the CIA. Of course, Donald Trump is someone who refused to serve himself when he was asked to serve in the military in Vietnam. He created a medical excuse. He made something up. He lied about his medical condition to dodge the draft. So this is not someone who understands what it means to put your life on the line for the country, as people in the CIA do. But somehow he finds some commonality with this murderous dictator in Russia.
I'm going to get to that, and you, of course, have served your country as well. And I'm going to ask you about the military consequences of what's going on for Ukraine and for Europe and for the United States. But first, just to get back to these tariffs, because the president campaigned on lowering prices, the cost of living for people who were concerned about the cost of living. And last night on tariffs, he was quite specific. Just listen to what he said.
The tariffs will go on agricultural product coming into America, and our farmers, starting on April 2nd, it may be a little bit of an adjustment period. We had that before when I made the deal with China, $50 billion of purchases, and I said, just bear with me, and they did. They did. Probably have to bear with me again, and this will be even better. That was great.
He's obviously acknowledging the disquiet amongst many sectors of America, the rowdy town halls about, various things, and especially in red states. But he's basically saying that the prices might not come down. And just one other thing, experts have said that actually that deal with China was not very good. China got the better end of that in his first term.
You said it before I did. That was where I was going to start, Christian, is that deal wasn't good for the United States. It didn't work out the way Trump sold it. And this is not going to work out the way he sells it either. Prices are going to go up, not just for farmers. It's not just going to be harder to be a farmer in America as a result of these tariffs, because they're going to have trouble selling their crops overseas, and we have a huge export market for our agricultural products. It's going to be harder for Americans who are just trying to pay the bills. It's extraordinary how much a dozen eggs costs in America right now, 4 times what it did just 6 months ago. And those prices continue to go up. Donald Trump, again, said on day one prices are going to go down, but they've gone in the opposite direction, and they keep going up. Prices are going up. The only thing that's going down in America right now is the stock market.
Yeah, I just want to quote from the Wall Street Journal because it is the business newspaper. It says the world economy could face a crash similar to the Great Depression of the 1930s unless the U.S. rose back on its plans to impose steep tariffs on imports. This is a senior official at the International Chamber of Commerce, which was quoted in the Wall Street Journal, puts us in a remarkably precarious position that'll cloud the global economy in the coming months. Do you think, I mean, that's very, very worrying, certainly for everybody overseas. Do you think that'll affect Americans as well?
Oh, absolutely. And there's no question it's going to make it more difficult for consumers at home. You know, when you put a tariff on some good that's coming to the United States, that's not paid by China or whatever other country the good is coming from. It's paid by the consumer. You know, so if I bought a battery from China that costs $5, now it costs $7, well, I'm paying that increase in cost. And yet somehow Trump is trying to sell this as if the cost is paid for by China, and that goes right to our bottom line. Mm-hmm. So the business world knows this is bad. The collective intelligence of the stock world knows this is bad. That's why stocks are taking a nosedive. This is going to be terrible for our economy. But to your point, Christian, it's not just the economy at large. It's not just whether or not we have sort of a global depression. It's just every single day Americans are going to pay more for the things they need.
I'm going to get to maybe some pushback or whatever from Republicans and others in Congress. But first, I want to ask you about Ukraine, because this is a huge, massive deal. Overseas, there is a genuine fear about which way America is going, which way it's aligning itself. It appears against allies towards Putin. Can I just read you what the conservative French Prime Minister said in his parliament this week, quoted by the New York Times, on a Ukraine debate? He said, "We have brutally discovered over the past few weeks a stunning reality that the international rule of law is broken." Talking about the United States, he says they want to encircle us, to subjugate us, to bend us to the law of the strongest, and this on the part of our allies. You know, and President Macron, who's trying to come up with a peace deal and has offered troops, etc., to enforce, has said we all want peace in Ukraine, but not at any price. Why do you... Well, first react to that view from the French Prime Minister.
Well, first of all, it's a totally reasonable view that's held by the majority of Americans. And this is important for people overseas to understand, is that Trump is really on an island here. Now, he has a bunch of isolationist Republicans supporting him, but I was at the Munich Security Conference 2 weekends ago, and I sat in a bipartisan delegation, Republicans and Democrats, as we met with our European allies and as we met with Zelensky. And what you heard was unanimous bipartisan support for Ukraine. So Republicans are the ones who are suddenly changing their story to support the president in his crazy crusade to back Vladimir Putin in this murderous war. The president changes his tune, and suddenly you have prominent Republicans like Lindsey Graham and a whole bunch of rank-and-file Republicans as well, suddenly completely spinning their stories to justify supporting Trump. That's not what you hear behind the scenes. Republicans are saying something completely different in private from what they say in public. That tells you a lot. I mean, they're just, frankly, cowards, and they're unwilling to stand up to the president and tell the truth. But it's also important for people internationally to know that it's not like all of a sudden America believes what the president is saying and America fully supports Donald Trump in his actions. No, even in Congress, a lot of Republicans totally disagree with the president. They're just too scared to say it.
Well, and in the meantime, then, you've got the president suspending military aid to Ukraine, $1 billion worth. You've got the CIA director confirming reports that they have also suspended intelligence to Ukraine. I mean, it was so vital during the years of this war to have that intelligence as to, you know, battlefield intelligence. Why are they doing this?
I mean, Christian, let me just start by saying, as someone who's been on the ground, serving in the infantry, you know, in the trenches, in the mud, in my case, in Iraq, I can't imagine what it must be like for one of these frontline troops suddenly hearing that their intelligence has been cut off, intelligence that they've relied on for 2 years. The reality is that the fight in Ukraine has gone so well largely because of American intelligence. In fact, I could make an argument that American intelligence is even more important to this fight than American arms.
But why?
We're getting arms from a lot of places, but it's the American intelligence that's so important. So people have to understand just how devastating this is to Ukraine. And the only answer that we get from the administration is somehow this is Donald Trump trying to put the screws to Zelensky, trying to put the screws to an ally that he just shamed in front of the international press. There is no good reason why. I can't stand here and give you an honest answer for why that Trump is doing this, other than to just simply state the obvious, which is that he seems to have taken sides in this war. And Donald Trump, again, not every American, but Donald Trump has taken the side of Vladimir Putin.
I wonder if anybody in Congress, I've tried to figure it out from the Ukrainians, from the administration. Now I'm asking you, what do you think is the substance of what President Trump says are good and constructive, conversations with Putin and the Russians? What do you think is contained in that?
I can't read the mind of Donald Trump, but I think that if you step back and try to look strategically at what this administration is doing, they very much view the world in terms of spheres of influence. They don't want America to perpetuate the sort of Pax Americana, to help keep world order. They want America to retreat just to our part of the world. That's why he talks about renewing the Monroe Doctrine. And he's so focused on renaming the Gulf of Mexico into the Gulf of America. I mean, that only matters if you only care about your backyard. He seems perfectly willing to cede Europe to the Europeans and to the Russians. And obviously, the Russians are the biggest dog on the block there. He seems perfectly willing to cede Asia to the Chinese. So this is a total change of American foreign policy. It's not driven by any consensus. It's driven really by one or two men, Donald Trump and I think Elon Musk, the presidential sidekick advisor-in-chief, seems to share this view. But that's kind of what's going on here. He wants to have a big rapprochement with Vladimir Putin to say, hey, we can be friends now because we're going to give you control of that part of the world and we're just going to focus on our own backyard.
And again, just a couple of last questions. Why do you think they, and actually this is a lot of Vance as well, the vice president, they're gaslighting Ukraine, basically saying that Zelensky wants to continue the war, where he doesn't. As he said, we want peace, but not at any cost. We need security guarantees. And a recent article in The Atlantic by Graham Wood says last year Russia made slow progress. Tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers were killed or wounded in exchange for Ukrainian territory slightly larger than the state of Rhode Island. At that rate, Russia will control all of Ukraine in about 118 years. I mean, those are the facts on the ground, and yet the president says that Zelensky has no cards, he's losing his country. Obviously, it's going to be tough without American support. But again, they're doing that, and they're dissing the Europeans. You saw what Vance did. The Prime Minister of Britain today opened PMQs, parliamentary questions, by paying tribute to actually more than 600 Brits who had been killed fighting alongside America in Iraq in 2003.
Trump is selling them out. I mean, there's not a better answer to this. I wish I could stand here as a proud American and tell you that there's a rhyme or reason to what the president is doing. Tell you that even though I don't agree with him, he's from a different political party, I didn't vote for him, we can be united on what we're doing with Ukraine. There are a lot of Republicans, to their credit, who stood shoulder to shoulder with President Biden in supporting Ukraine policy. Every time we had a Ukraine bill come through the Congress in the last couple of years, a majority of Republicans, almost all Democrats, but also a majority of Republicans supported Ukraine aid. But what's going on right now is, I mean, let me be blunt, Christian. Donald Trump is acting like a puppet for Vladimir Putin. He's a puppet. He's a puppet for this brutal dictator. And Vance is playing right along. I can't tell if Vance is more a puppet for Putin or just a puppet for Donald Trump. But that's what's happening right now. And it is unbelievably devastating to the world order. It's very dangerous for our national security in America. Our allies think that they can't trust us all around the world, not just in Europe. Our adversaries see a huge opening to take advantage of us because we're apparently just going to let them walk all over us and our allies. This is very, very dangerous for the United States of America. It's very dangerous for our allies. It's empowering dictators. And a lot of Americans, including the majority of members of Congress, completely disagree with the president here.
Well, we wish. Honestly, we keep trying to engage with the administration. It's proven very impossible so far, and we're hoping that we can in the future. But let's just get to DOGE and the Democratic response. So Washington Post in February says 49% of respondents disapprove of Musk and what DOGE is doing, you know, the wholesale chainsaw firings and the pandemonium that was being created amongst federal workers, etc. Only 34 approve, 49 do not. But in your narrative, you know, if the president is struggling so badly, or however you see it, why are the Democrats also seem to be struggling in how to respond? Let me first play a little bit from the great Senator Alyssa Slotkin, who gave the formal Democratic response last night.
Look, the president talked a big game on the economy, but it's always important to read the fine print. So, do his plans actually help Americans get ahead? Not even close. President Trump is trying to deliver an unprecedented giveaway to his billionaire friends. He's on the hunt to find trillions of dollars to pass along to the wealthiest in America. And to do that, he's going to make you pay in every part of your life.
So it's pretty robust, but in general, as you know, the view of the Democrats is that you're sort of gobsmacked and you don't quite know what to do. And I'm not just talking about punching back, I'm talking about policy and, you know, try to reverse all these things that you think are so negative.
Well, I think there's two things that Democrats need to do, and I'm certainly doing what I can to do them. One is standing up vociferously to Trump. And I've not been afraid to call him out on what needs to happen and what the administration is doing wrong. But the second thing is that we really do need to look ourselves in the mirror as Democrats and ask the question, how is it that we have lost touch with the majority of Americans? I mean, we just got wiped out in an election that should have been the easiest election in our history. We've never had to run against an indicted criminal before, a convicted felon. This should have been so easy for Democrats, and yet we lost across the board. So we need to make some serious reforms to our own party. And I've written about how we've become a party of preachers. We talk down to people. We say, if you disagree with us, you're not only wrong, but you're a bad person. We actually need to lift up the voices of Americans, meet them where they are, and bring them along, widen our tent to bring in different points of view rather than be beholden to some liberal orthodoxy. We need to have plans to actually fix some of the things that the Republicans correctly identify as problems. It's just that their solutions aren't helpful. I mean, is government reform something that we should do? Absolutely. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find any American who believes that the federal government is efficient. The problem is that what Elon Musk is doing is not making government more efficient. He's making it non-existent. But Democrats have to have a plan in response. We shouldn't just sit back and watch Republicans ruin everything. We should have a plan to reform government ourselves, and candidly, we haven't had that. We also need to have plans to address immigration, another issue that we just denied for too long. So we need to do some serious reform efforts at the same time as we're standing up to Trump.
All right, Congressman Moulton, thank you very much indeed for joining us. So, as the Trump administration launches this onslaught of sweeping change, it's not just the amount of news to report, but journalists are increasingly finding themselves under threat.